This might sound a little bit dry. We're going to be talking about DCI PSS version 4. But this is very important because it references how payment companies need to be compliant by the 31st of March, particularly with regards to protecting their customers against phishing attacks. So, do you want to talk us a little bit more, talk us through this in a little bit more detail?
I could go into a little bit more detail. I can't say I'm an expert in PCI DSS compliance, the payment card industry data security standards, but I think anyone who works in the business who takes credit card payments will be aware of PCI DSS. It's just the sort of set of standards that you need to sort of meet to handle and process card payments. Like all these things, they get updated. The latest version is coming out. As you say, it's implemented on the 31st of March, which is, I believe, just a few days away at the time of recording. And in it this time is a particular sort of request or requirement to implement a thing called DMARC, which is the domain-based message authentication reporting and confirmation regulations. Now, this all sounds very dry, and I am not an expert, but my understanding of it is this is a compliance issue that you have to have in place that protects your web address and therefore email addresses from being used by other people. Now, what that means is that it's an attempt to stop scams that they hijack your business's email address. You get an email from what it really does appear to be the company you've been dealing with wanting money, but of course it's not. So it's quite complicated how DMARC works. There's a link in the story to sort of give you a sort of explainer of what it is, how it works, how you do it, and all that kind of thing. But essentially, it's this idea that the companies who are taking card payments, which let's face it, is almost probably all of the people running services that we deal with, take card payments alongside everything else, need to be very much on top of this in an attempt to try and counteract this idea of people using your email address and your web domain and everything to scam and send out sort of fraudulent requests for payment.
Yeah, no, and I mean it's interesting as I alluded to earlier on that back in the day the telemedia industry really hung its hat on a very limited number of very specific payment mechanisms, but now anybody that has listened to our vodcasts or reads our magazine or newsletter or comes to our shows will realize that it's all about maximizing conversion rates and engaging consumers in as many ways as you possibly can. And that means offering the widest range of payment mechanisms. And of course, credit card now is again, deeply embedded in many or most telemedia services. Because obviously, the more ways you offer consumers to pay, the more likely you are to get paid and get on board them as customers. This particular report, as Paul mentioned, is available as a free download. And one of the shocking highlights really is that given that deadline is the 31st of March, and as Paul mentioned, we're only a few days away from that, still only 38% have actually implemented this DMARC thing thingy, which and I hate to use a pun, but it potentially means that over the next few months it's going to be lovely weather for fishing.
Mm.
So apologies for that. I don't mean to be glib, but it does sound
The
as
whole thing was just building as a vehicle for that joke.
it was, but it is frightening if 60% of merchants and anyone that's processing credit cards have not actually implemented this. There's going to be trouble. So what is the answer? And the second story kind of points us in an interesting direction. And we're going to talk a little bit about tokenization. Now, I first really believed that telemedia service providers and aggregators and merchants were starting to use tokenization for real in Barcelona 2024 when I started to talked to various clients that were there, I think particularly from some of the Middle Eastern areas, that were really successfully working with networks on tokenization and have got some really great services up and running using tokenization as an alternative payment mechanism. The story goes consumer desire for seamless checkout, which we know is fundamental to telemedia industry strategies, along with the need for better security to drive network tokenization. Boom. So this is Juniper Research. This is from Juniper Research. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, so I thought it sort of sat quite nicely with the sort of PCI DSS compliance story, and that sort of the PCI DSS sort of idea is around sort of card payments. You think, well, maybe card payments are sort of becoming not obsolete, but possibly a way around this is to look at sort of tokenization of payments, which is sort of how things like Apple Pay and Google Pay and sort of wallets work, in that the network issues a unique token for that transaction. So it's not entirely sort of unhackable, and of course, like anything that sort of purports to be secure, the hackers will come along and find a way around it. But for now, it's a more secure, and it makes for a more seamless and smooth payment. And as you say, we've seen a lot of companies, particularly in sort of developing markets, talking about these sort of kind of payments because it's easy to implement. It works really well, and I think Juniper's sort of latest study just points to how they see this as being, extremely successful. I mean, it's already sort of carrying $4.1 billion worth of payments in 2025. They estimate it'll be up to nearly 9 billion by 2029. So, I mean, obviously we can't hold them to that number, but it's growing. It's almost going to double in 4 years. It could well be that sort of as like these phishing attacks and card payments, it's all just a bit old world, isn't it? So maybe it's time to sort of, we're going to see more of this sort of tokenization of payments, wallets, alternative payment mechanisms, and let's not forget carrier billing can have a much higher level of security to it if it's done right and properly sort of analysed and assessed by companies like Avena and MCP. So yeah, I just thought the two things sort of together was quite interesting. There's this sort of compliance thing coming along where they have to be ready by the 31st of March, 2/3 of them aren't. And maybe that's because there is an alternative, or there are alternatives. And I think perhaps this kind of thing and fraud generally is what's going to just sort of drive the uptake of these newer technologies.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. And I would say let's file this under the telemedia alternative payments section, which has now become a regular buzzword with regards to our editorial, but also the conference content that we put together in our upcoming shows, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on. The Juniper Research Report, you can find out more, download a free sample of the report. It's called Global Network Tokenization Market 2025 to 29. You can download that right now. And I would strongly suggest you do, as I say, it comes under the umbrella heading alternative payments, and that certainly is something of a buzzword in our sector right now. And also, just as a final point, I mean, one of the reasons why the broad range of payments is so necessary, of course, is that this particular solution will probably only work in developed markets where there's already high credit card penetration, which is all very well and good. But what happens if you're in the other developing markets, and hence the need for alternatives? But there you go. Well, thank you very much for that. And remember, if you are interested in alternative payment mechanisms and where that's all going, and if you are selling digital services and value-added services and premium content, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment below, because you will get much more of our content focusing on this area. And of course, you will also be able to subscribe to our newsletter and our magazine.